So, thank you very much for having me, and I'm very happy to be here. And so what I want to do is talk about how conservatives have gotten not only the economy wrong, they've gotten economics wrong. And to talk about economics with a sort of value-based tinge to it, because I think one of the things we have tended not to do is to talk enough about the values, and embedded in America are a lot of values when it comes to economics. Key among these is that the Republicans confuse what freshmen who take economics get, which is the sense that if I see two firms in an industry, that's competition. And it takes a whole semester of teaching economics in order to get them to understand that that is not what economists mean by competition. And in fact, economists argue that when you have market power, that you don't have the allocative efficiencies that the marketplace has. And in fact, the market will misallocate resources if you have market power. When economists talk about competition, what we really mean is real competition, that the outcome is unknown, that in fact this is competition among people who are so much alike, so equally equipped against each other that no one knows the outcome. So if you have two huge giants, then we already know the outcome if anybody else walks into the room, right? If Muhammad Ali says he's going to pick on me, this is not competition, okay? So what we have to do is get the public to understand the difference between market power and competition. And, you know, even though I'm a very liberal guy, I've actually become more of a market-oriented person, because as you see market failure upon market failure, and you see Republicans and conservatives consistently side with market power and not with the market as the allocative decision maker. When you have market power, it's not the market that's determining it, it's the powerful force that's determining it. It's Enron who's determining whether you get a pension or not, because who's in charge of Enron gets to make determinations, not the market making the determination. And so that's going to be a key point of what I would like to say. Now, first off, of course, and we have to be clear on economics, is that conservatives have not known how to run the economy. And we really should not get into a debate about it, because it's a quantifiable answer. Do you do the fundamental thing? Do you generate jobs for Americans? That's the fundamental thing, right? This is a society that says you must work. And so the number one responsibility of whoever is in power is to generate the jobs so that people can answer the question, yes, I work. But that, of course, means you have some competent people running the economy. We should not be taking back seats to being beaten up over, you're just tax and spend and blah, 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 blah. No, we generate jobs. You don't. And we had to get people to talk about the bottom line. I don't care how you got me the job. We'll debate that later. But if you don't get me a job, we can have lots of debates, okay? So they just have not. I mean, of course, the last two, both Bushes, have failed miserably. Their only competition is Herbert Hoover. The best of them was Richard Nixon, and he did worse than the worst of the Democrats, Jimmy Carter. So when the best of them do worse than our worst, and the worst of them do worse than Herbert Hoover, this is really not a debatable point. They just don't deliver. Oops, it didn't move forward. Oops, okay. Okay. And of course, they've done this by doing what conservatives say they don't stand for, which is they keep running up deficits, and this is the comment about running the car into the ditch. So yes, it's kind of fun, you know, we rev up the engine and we run the car into the ditch. And that's what they keep doing, because they keep running up these huge deficits. And they run up more deficits, and then it takes getting somebody in who can actually shrink them. And that was the responsibility of the Clinton administration last time. Unfortunately, it's become sort of a mantra now that we have become, progressives have become the people who actually believe in balancing the budget. I think more appropriately, as was pointed out before, no, we just believe in being responsible and doing what it takes to be responsible. And Of course, they would like us to believe that the reason we get these deficits in their administrations is because we're running around and spending money, and the big take that George Bush isn't, conservative enough is because he's allowed these Congress people to run up all these programs out of kilter, like not funding enough for food inspectors and not funding enough for getting people out of flood zones. So we all understand that there is a certain size government, and the reality is that the Republican Congress itself kind of realized at some point that they really couldn't cut it more than what they could wish for. And you see that little trend line. In fact, we're still below trend for what is true for the nation as a whole in terms of what it takes to run our government. Now, what they, of course, do is cut, the black line is our receipts. These are in terms of share of GDP. And so you really have to think of it this way. People want to talk about how big the government is in absolute terms. But of course, if you have a mansion, then you're going to have to spend a lot more money in order to make the lawn look good than if you have an apartment. And so as the economy gets bigger and more complex and you're a richer country, it takes a lot more government in order to keep that house in order. And so you really need to think about it from percentage terms side, and the red line shows that, in fact, we aren't really outspending ourselves, we are underfunding the government. That's what the black line is. Okay, and now the tale is that we're kind of living up to, helping out Americans, and the little blue line show you when we change administrations. And you can see sort of modest income growth for America's families at the median level in real terms, except for when we get to this George Bush, because it's flat, and it's only flat because we have done a better job for seniors than we have for other workers, and so we've actually had the ability to keep it from going down during this George Bush. But they have not generated a lot of money for those who are at the middle. The biggest increases you see under what we pass off as progressive administrations, what they have really done through confusing market power and competition is to allow the resources to go to those at the top. And so since 1980, we have gone from this shared prosperity to this graph here, which is the failure of conservatives to get us away from understanding what the economy is about, and to retreat from a value that Americans really believe, that the government is really supposed to be putting forth economic policies that benefit Americans. We elect the government to benefit Americans, not 5% of Americans. Americans in the general sense. And so what Americans feel betrayed about is that they now have a government which appears to be really somebody else's government. It has policies that benefit 5% of America and leaves the 95% of the rest of us behind. So when George Bush said, the haves, the have-mores, and you're my base, he meant it almost half as a joke, but half is reality. Okay? The result is, of course, that American households are running up debt at an unbelievable rate since the 1980s. Household debt is going up, that's the blue line, but non-home-backed mortgage debt is going up at a tremendous rate because Americans are trying to keep up by mortgaging themselves. They've already mortgaged our government, so why can't we just mortgage ourselves as well? I'm borrowing this from economist Thomas Lemieux. The stories we get told is that, well, this is all globalization and it's really not conservatism. It's the 1980s, the world's become more global and Americans need to be more skilled, and it's really a story. The growth in inequality has really been across the board, but most extreme among those who are college educated. So it isn't such a simple story to say that it's just skill. It's not skill. And I like this chart because it's to remind you that policy matters. And unfortunately, the other thing that conservatives have sold us on is the idea of states' rights again, and the idea that states actually can do something very meaningful about a lot of things. States generate bad policies and bad inequality. And so, you know, their favorite whipping person on the issue of poverty are single-family households, right? Single female-headed households. This is really evil. But look at the difference in poverty rates. You know, the line goes all over the place. There's highs, lows all over the place. Policy matters. I know y'all can't read the other chart, but this is so you can see the chart. That's Mississippi. That's New Jersey. Single-family-headed households. The poverty rate in Mississippi, which does everything conservatives say that you're supposed to do, have a low tax rate, don't give anybody any money for welfare, don't give anybody unemployment insurance money, don't have Medicare, don't have Medicaid, don't have anything, and you will generate poverty. New Jersey does exactly what progressives say you're supposed to do. It has among the highest unemployment benefits. It has somewhat decent TANF benefits. It has a higher unionization rate. It has a higher tax rate. It does all the things that we say you're supposed to do, and you get a lower poverty rate. That's over a half difference in poverty rates for single female-headed households. It's policy. It's what we do to people. It's what we do to people that matters, and what we have to make clear is that we have values in our policies that say that it's not market power that lets the big guy eat the little guy. That's not competition, and it's not in the market allocating forces. And we have succeeded. When Lyndon Johnson said he wanted to attack childhood poverty, we got childhood poverty reduced. I'm using black kids here because they benefited the most from his policy, and you can see more dramatically the huge decline from almost 70% poverty levels for black kids down to 40%. Ronald Reagan, who said that the poor lost the war on poverty. Well, the poor lost the war on poverty when Ronald Reagan became president. Nothing. And so we have to stop being defensive. When we do things with the economy, we do them well. We don't run up irresponsible deficits. We do get people jobs. And we do know policies that make differences in people's lives. And we do uphold the sense that the government is for the American people and has policies for all of us, that we are in a government situation now that is more like Mississippi. The red states, unfortunately, are dictating policy to all of us. And the red states, if I put up a chart, but I don't have time to, the red states are the poorest states in the United States. Isn't this very interesting? And then they want us to adopt their policies, their economic policies. And I need to stop right now, but I just want to put up this one chart here real quick. What has happened to male earnings? And as you can see here, a higher and higher share of men are not making enough money to keep their families out of poverty. The whole self-insurance scheme is falling apart. That urgency is being felt by the American people. That's the betrayal they are feeling. And what we have to do is talk to the values of Americans on what is the government supposed to do. Is it supposed to serve us, the people, or the few? Is it supposed to be for a fair marketplace or the jungle marketplace? That's what we have to get people to talk about.